The Indonesian domino ultimately fell on the western side of the Cold War divide. Compared with getting bogged down in Vietnam, it was seen as a clear victory for anti-communism and for President Lyndon Johnson. Visiting Vietnam later in 1966, LBJ was to invoke Indonesia as a rallying point. He told U.S. troops that their exploits were the reason why people in Indonesia were enjoying freedom that they didn't previously have. But in reality, it would be more than 3 decades before Indonesia would taste political freedom and freedom of speech. Now, after General Suharto has fallen, Indonesians can finally question his official version of their history. Like Professor Arief Budianto, the forensic pathologist who in 1965 was called to examine the bodies of the dead generals.
I got 3 bodies to examine. Not a single one of the bodies do we find the penis slice. Or we had signs of torturing, we don't find. Nobody is glad to sign our reports because the newspapers, they wrote already about the torturing. They said the penis too, they cut it off and then they throw it. They play with that, the Garwanis women.
Professor Budianto's autopsy report was suppressed under the orders of General Suharto. Many Western journalists accepted the lurid story without question.
Terror and bestiality was a calculated part of the PKI plan. They even had special mutilation squads made up of girls. Sex orgies went on before the torture ceremonies got underway. Eventually, the mutilated bodies were dumped down a well.
This monument was built at the place where the generals' bodies were dumped down the well.
This is what pains me most, to see the women here, because I spent several years together with women who had been tortured to confess that they had perpetrated sexual crimes against the bodies of these generals. And of course we know that that was not true. Their confessions were published in the newspapers. And this was perhaps the most important propaganda weapon that Suharto used to send people out and kill members of our suspects, communist suspects, family, everything. Ini dia umur berapa? 10. 10 juga? Sekecil. Dan ini juga 10. 12. Kenapa dibawa ke sini?
Jalan-jalan aja.
Hah?
Mau lihat pahlawan. Mau nyatet sejarah.
Oh. Tapi gurunya bilang ini betul apa yang dilihat sini?
Betul.
Ya, tapi sebetulnya banyak bohong di sini. Banyak hal yang diuraikan di sini di diorama itu tidak benar. Karena saya dulu juga kenal dengan wanita-wanita yang dikatakan begini, tapi mereka tidak berbuat begini. Jadi ini banyak sekali bohong di sini.
Gimana maksudnya bohong?
Suharto itu berkuasa. Jadi dia membuat ceritanya sendiri apa yang terjadi di sini supaya orang benci sama PKI.
Dulu kan suka itu putar 31 September.
Ya.
Itu filmnya itu benar apa enggak itu?
Tidak benar. Ya.
Benar.
Banyak bohong. They say here these killings shouldn't be repeated. What happened after this was not 6 people being killed, but more than 600,000 people killed. And these are the people I'm thinking of now, because I think they deserve a monument for the way in which they were killed.
Military courts put more than 1,000 people on trial for the murder of the generals. There were no acquittals. The courts ruled that the Indonesian Communist Party was the sole puppet master behind the murders. Over 70 death sentences were handed down for the crime of having prior knowledge of the plan. But it's far from clear who else had prior knowledge of the plan to kidnap the generals. True responsibility is variously attributed to President Sukarno, General Suharto, and Western intelligence agencies. The only leader of the 30th of September movement left alive is Colonel Latif, who survived 33 years in prison. He claims he informed General Suharto of their plans, and Suharto has admitted meeting with him.
Saya malam itu sudah ketemu sama Sidarto, memberitahu kalau paginya akan dihadapkan para jenderal sama Bung Karno. Karena semua sepakat Harto dianggap loyal sama Bung Karno.
Those who see the hand of Suharto say it was his agents who infiltrated the 30th of September movement to make sure the generals were killed that fateful night. The rebel soldiers maintained it was never their intention to kill the generals. Their intention, they said, was to bring them before President Sukarno to face charges of planning a coup against him. President Sukarno was put under house arrest for his supposed involvement. He died a broken man in 1970. But what of the role of Western intelligence agencies? Omar Dani, head of the Air Force, received a death sentence for his foreknowledge. Released after more than 30 years in detention, he clings to a view that many Indonesians like to believe.
I think that the CIA is fully involved. And Suharto cannot do that because at that time, I don't think that not one general has the capacity to arrange such an intricate and so complicated operations.
As CIA station head at the time, Hugh Tovar denies the CIA had any involvement in the conspiracy.
In my time, 64, 5, and 6, the CIA was never told to do any such thing. The CIA was sent out there to collect intelligence and to report it to headquarters and to tell us what in the name of heaven is going on in that crazy country. You know, that's the way it was. And if the audience can't take that at face value, there's nothing I can say that's going to convince them.
What is fully established is that Britain and the U.S. gave extensive support to the army immediately after the murder of the generals, including providing weapons. The full extent will not be revealed until all the documents have been declassified, which could take many decades. For years, American diplomats strenuously denied providing lists to the Indonesian army, until recent declassifications revealed the truth.
There were lists going around. I don't know who compiled them, but the theory was they're the people who are going to be extirpated next. So clearly there was a method and an organisation behind it all.
It may never be established how many people died in the massacres. Today, some academics estimate up to 1 million Indonesians may have been murdered.
Sampai sekarang tidak jelas berapa jumlahnya. Tapi terakhir Domo yang Domo tamu, dia menyatakannya 2 juta. Terus yang memimpin pembantaian Sarwo Edi pernah menyampaikan pada seseorang 3 juta. Tapi jumlah yang jelas tidak ada yang tahu sampai sekarang.
Melayu, ayo Melayu, Melayu,
The newly established Massacre Victims Research Foundation wants to confront history by digging up the skeletons that have lain silent for 35 years. This wasn't Nazi-style industrial-scale killing. It was village-level murder with many thousands of graves spread across the country.
Ya, kami mendapat surat dari yayasan itu yang mencari orang-orang hilang tadi itu. Dan dinyatakan bahwa itu para korban yang telah dieksekusi sebanyak 23 orang itu, Kaliwiro ini, itu makamnya akan digali kembali.
Bulannya 6, 1965. Tanggalnya ini.
This grave is unique because here the dead can be identified. The list of names and the map that was smuggled back to relatives provides the crucial information.
Sekarang saat ini ya, setelah kami mengetahui ada kerangka ya yang kalau diidentifikasi ya.
Mas Ibnu itu siapa, Bu?
Dr. Andus Ibnu Santoro.
Sayang karena ada 2 gigi yang dicabut ya, dan sesuai dengan berita dari dokter yang bersangkutan, ya, dokter forensik yang memeriksa bahwa ini adalah kakaknya. Karena pada waktu itu berumur 34 tahun, ya, itu.
Ini lubang keluarnya kayak.
Ini lubang keluarnya.
Lubang masuk. Ini masuk yang ke sana.
Ini.
Depannya. Nah, ini lubang keluarnya.
Di sini adalah dibunuh, kemudian ditembak, kemudian dimasukkan ke dalam lubang, ya, 2 lubang yang ditumpuk satu persatu tanpa ditumpuk kayak apa saja itu, kayak kayak menimbun binatang saja itu. Itu saya merasa sakit. Tapi itu kita sebagai seorang Islam Muslim ya, yang beragama ya, itu semua kita kembalikan kepada Yang Maha Kuasa.
For Indonesian Muslims, it's traditional to make an annual visit to the graves of their relatives. These families can now rebury their lost relatives in accordance with their beliefs.
Keluarga ini duduk di makamkan, ngentung tangan tanah tumpah darah bapaknya. Kinten-kinten saged mlebet boten.
But as they will soon find out, even this simple gesture will stir old resentments. An estimated 600,000 political prisoners were held without trial in the early years of Suharto's rule. Carmel Budiarjo recalls sharing a prison cell with Dr. Sumiasi.
What always sticks in my mind about Dr. Sumiasi was she said, we must not succumb to their bullying. And the way we don't succumb is by staying healthy. We have to survive.
The 2 women haven't seen each other since prison 30 years ago.
I can't believe it.
Hello, how are you? Yes.
Dan baru sekarang bisa kembali ke Indonesia.
Iya, kembali balik.
Karena lama tidak
Yeah,
boleh.
yeah.
A Dutch cameraman came to Plantungan.
Oh yeah.
And you were in the film.
Oh yeah, yeah. Examining the patient.
With your ear.
With my
That's right, with your
yeah.
ear.
The only doctor in Plantungan is herself a political prisoner.
I am checking her heart with my bare ear. Actually, I need a stethoscope, but there is no stethoscope.
Kita membuat tempat yang sedih ini, neraka ini sebahagia mungkin. Hati tetap pedih. You don't jangan lupa. Ya, don't forget. We have always a dark and a bitter heart in our heart. All is bitter. But di luarnya, ya kelihatannya itu kita ini ya biasa saja. Biasa saja. Sebab itu apa? Ya, oleh karena kita tidak tahu kapan mau keluarnya, berapa lama, jadi membuat hidup di sini ini sebaik mungkin.
In the 11 years she was detained, Dr. Sumiyoshi barely saw her 3 children grow up.
Kalau anak tidak tahu, kalau anak saya ngomong bahwa saya bukan anak saya, tahu. Waktu dibawa ke Plantungan saya, terus ditawarin mesti keburu, anak berapa coach rodet tanpa anak, jadi berangkat sendiri. Nah gitu, jadi tidak pernah ngomong seitunya.
She wanted to protect her children from the vilification directed at families of communist suspects. Even today, her children still call her auntie in public because of the institutionalized shame from the Suharto years. After her arrest, Carmel Budiarjo's teenage children fled to London, where they lobbied for their parents' release. After 4 years, she was let out of prison and told never to return to Indonesia. Her husband was detained for a further 8 years. Carmel established a lobby group to draw attention to the plight of political prisoners. Other critical human rights issues in Indonesia soon took over, like East Timor.
I remember reading about what was happening in East Timor. I really wept because we knew what the army was capable of. We had tried, our particular efforts were obviously devoted to getting the British government to stop selling arms. For so many years we had pleaded with them, and they just wouldn't listen.
By the 1990s, the Indonesian army had been getting away with murder for 25 years with scant criticism from the West. But on this occasion, the Western media managed to get pictures of one of its massacres in broad daylight. In East Timor, the Indonesian army used their tried and true tactic of recruiting militia gangs, the tactic condoned by the West in 1965.
I do see a line there right from the start. We condoned it, let's put it that way. I don't think we should have condoned it entirely as we did. We've given them the impression, particularly the army, that, in the long run they can do what they like.
But it was the people of Indonesia themselves who suffered on an even greater scale under General Suharto's military dictatorship.
In Indonesia, the army was fully in control of the political instruments of power through surveillance and domestic intelligence, conducting, dirty tricks, operations, including extra-legal killings, kidnappings, you name it, torture, state terror.
Today, General Suharto may be out of power, but reburying the bones exhumed from Kaliwiro is a highly sensitive issue. Along with the relatives of other victims, Joyo Santoso has come to transfer his brother's bones into a small coffin for reburial in the family cemetery. The foundation has obtained permission to rebury those bones unclaimed by relatives here in the village of Caloran. Local Muslims object and blockade the house.
The generals then order the people to be against the communists by picturing the communists as the culprits of the attempted coup d'etat on the night of September 30 and the consequent times. So people were against communism, but actually it's misperception.
Karena begini, di sini itu kalau untuk makamkan daerah sini bukan daerah PKI ya begitu. Mungkin yang ngompor itu juga nganggap ini PKI kan gitu.
With the house blockaded, Joyo and the other relatives try to remove the coffins to safety.
Kita berangkat keluar, ternyata di depan rumah Pak itu Irawan sudah ada poster-poster. Ya, kemudian juga sudah ada, jadi pintu keluar itu sudah diblokir sehingga keluar masuk daripada rumah Pak Irawan itu sudah diblokir. Nah, kemudian mereka sempat memancing emosi ya dengan jalan penempeleng itunya, sopirnya, keneknya, terus kemudian Bu Sri juga semacam diperlakukan dengan kasar ya itu.
Silakan Ibu ke tempat Pak Irawan dulu. Tua-tua petingkah kamu tuh.
Nah, setelah itu kemudian yang keluar yang pemimpinnya yang pakai kumis tadi itu teriak-teriak, pokoknya memaki-maki lah. PKI gini. Kemudian, ayo siapa mau marah? Ya, sambil mengeluarkan pisau belati. Yang mau marah saya bunuh.
Cuma kecemburuan ideologis, karena kita tahu semua bahwa yang akan dikebumikan ini tulang belulang dari orang-orang yang berdekatan sebagai ex-G30S.
Joyo and the others managed to rescue their relatives' bones for later reburial. The mob attacks the house and burns the empty coffins while the police stand by. They later destroy the house completely. In the stories of the shadow plays taken from ancient Hindu texts, injustice is bloodily avenged. Forgiveness is not part of the equation. What chance, then, for justice or reconciliation in Indonesia?
Menurut saya rekonsiliasi itu kan lelucon saja. Ini sudah tugas negara harus mendirikan hukum, mendirikan keadilan untuk rakyatnya sendiri. Apa persoalan rekonsiliasi? Apa persoalan maaf? Ini itu. Yang penting hukum didirikan, keadilan didirikan, hak-hak asasi manusia didirikan. Itu persoalan yang harus dilakukan oleh negara.
We have to be honest to history. If we did a wrong thing, then we have to apologize for it.
Having struggled against Suharto's authoritarian regime, President Sukarno's daughter now takes her oath as the new president of Indonesia. Like her father before her, Megawati Sukarno Putri must balance the volatile forces inside her country. The military remains powerful. Her only counterweight is Indonesia's fragile democracy and the shaky rule of law. After 35 years, Ibnu Santoro has been rescued from a mass grave and is being given the dignity of a proper burial. One person among the countless victims of this Cold War massacre is finally laid to rest. But in today's Indonesia, the ghosts are very much alive.